We're here with Dr. Amy Haas, and has a background in research. But today we're not going to focus on her credentials. We're going to focus we're going to focus more on the fact that Amy is a proud chiropractor in full-time practice, focusing on the vertebral subluxation, which I love.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so we're going to kind of, in some sense, veer away from the research per se and focus more on biology and what does biology say to us, as well as how that integrates or meshes with traditional chiropractic philosophy. So I have some very...
It does in such a spectacular way. I'm so glad to be having this conversation. Yes, please go on.
Awesome. And I know we have similar interests in terms of not only chiropractic interests and scientific interests, but really lifestyle interests, which I believe integrate really well with chiropractic care. So I'm going to throw you some curveballs that we didn't prepare this. Okay. And they're, again, more or less philosophical questions. Something that I've been saying recently, because I know you love to hike and to go to the shore and be outdoors. And something I've tried to communicate to chiropractors, and I think I've done a poor job, but recently the way I've been expressing it is that we need to go outside to be more in touch with, or to find out what's on the inside. In other words, to discover or rediscover who we are as people. And that, again, I think really is part of the chiropractic message that's been left out. Can you speak to that? And I know, again, I'm doing this so spontaneously.
No, awesome, love it.
Okay.
Yeah, I will speak to that in a way that I think you'll really very much agree with. It's left out of current chiropractic education, but it is very integral to our profession and its history. Because the human body we are spiritual beings. We are, in essence, living in a physical body, and the physical body is governed by natural laws. With the laws of physics, the laws of systems biology, the laws of biochemistry. So in order to best respect and understand those laws, our body has to integrate with the environment around it. We spend so much time in artificial environments like this, fluorescent, well, these are not fluorescent lights because I hate fluorescent lights, but inside and in Wi-Fi and in artificial, not integrating with the real world. And if you think about the human body as a machine by which we adapt to our environments, the input our body receives, the multi-sensory input our body receives, will be integrated by the brain, and then the brain will execute commands, adaptations according to our environment. Well, if all of our environment is sitting at a desk looking at a computer, then we're creating an artificial environment. And our body is going to adapt to that environment, which is not of the natural order. And if we were meant to sit on our butts all day looking at computers, we would have had feet growing out of our glutes rather than our ankles. So
and some people are starting to morph into that shape. So I know, I know it's instinctive for you as well as for me. Nobody has to encourage me to be out there or to tell me all the research now that is being generated. They're even actually calling it by really a medicalized or a disease-based name, nature deficiency syndrome, rather than just encouraging people, you were made to go outside. It's got to have a medical diagnosis.
Play.
Yeah. And so, again, it's instinctive. And I see it as well on your social media page that you're out there as much as you can be with your puppies. And why have some people disconnected? Maybe let me zero in on chiropractors. Why have so many chiropractors missed that message? Is that an unfair question?
No, it's a lovely question. So you've heard the saying that you are the summary of the 5 people you spend the most time with. right?
Hmm.
Well, you're adapted to your environment. And if you don't see the outside, you kind of forget about it. If you live your life integrating through your TV and your mobile device, you forget that there's fresh air outside, that there's sunshine. And your body becomes adapted. Let's just take fluorescent lights as an example. Let's look at the biology of circadian rhythm with respect to being outside and having your retinas exposed to light. That regulates
Absolutely.
your body rhythms. And if you spend a week outside camping and hiking, your body will find its own natural sleep cycle and recharge that sleep cycle back to a normal situation, because again, our bodies are part of the natural universe. Whereas so many people have sleep problems, it's because they never get outside and
Absolutely.
their bodies are so out of sync with the natural surroundings, the natural universe around us.
Yeah. So now, what does that have to do with the inside, and specifically or neurologically? Um, is there a connection between that essential? I call, I always tell people getting outdoors is not optional. It's if
No.
you're not outdoors, you're not functioning as a whole human being. You're not your brain is deficient, as you said. Your retinas are not collecting the sunlight. You're actually I'm just recently reading a new book by a medical doctor, Dr. John Rady, called "Go Wild." And one study he cites, just one of many, he says that
Free cutting.
yes, that's it right there. Free range human. And that's what we're all supposed to be, what we're designed to be. And he said,
Yes.
he highlights many studies. He's clinical professor or an associate professor at Harvard in clinical sciences. And he cites many studies, just one of which says that um, when they studied people that were now, this was not a study about the outdoors. It's not in front of me. So this was people that were spending 3 times a week, just 3 times a week, getting a minimal amount of movement and exercise. So I'm kind of switching gears. But he said that they had significantly less depression, significantly less anxiety, significantly less cynical trust. And there was one other marker that they measured, some of which against the control group that didn't get this minimal amount of exercise, some of which dropped down to zero depression, anxiety. Their stress level went down to nothing. And then you combine that with being outdoors, and all those things really, again, coincide. So I guess the point I'm getting at, and it's obvious that you agree with, is that we're surprised. We're as a society. You're not surprised. I'm not surprised, but we're surprised as a society at the level of opioid addiction, the level of suicide, the level of people that are chemically dependent, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications, when really we shouldn't be surprised at all, because we're living disconnected from
No,
our design. Yes,
incoherent from our natural order.
absolutely. Here's a quote I'm going to ask you to respond to that's in keeping with all this. Are you familiar with Dr. Matthew Alvord? He's really a philosophically based chiropractor. Yeah, I love Matt, and I think he's really holding down the fort philosophically in our profession. But he just recently said, and I'm going to read it to you, and it's kind of an ironic statement on purpose. Uh, Imagine a world where medicine is frustrated because they can't convince people that drugs are the answer to their health problems. And it's just been flipped around, hasn't it? It's been flipped around.
It's hilarious. It's the whole question of shoot, what is it? Oh my goodness, my brain is not coming up with the words. Whatever concept is, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I'm
That's all
totally
right.
missing.
That's right.
Uh, I'm
What was
sorry,
the
what
what's
they
the
put out
essence
there
of
are,
what's
what's that?
the essence of what you're saying?
I'm sure you can delete that segment, by the way. That the medical profession enjoys a certain social position as accepted, and that's
Oh,
just kind of, what's
the
the word I'm looking for? I'm
authority, the cultural authority.
yes, cultural authority. How did I forget those words? I'm so
Yeah,
sorry. My brain's
that's
not
okay.
working.
Yeah,
So medicine enjoys cultural authority, and what if that were reversed? What if chiropractic had cultural authority? That would be super duper awesome.
right. And part of the
So
reason I think we don't is people are looking for a quick fix. They've been convinced that there's, a pill for every ill because,
yeah,
yeah,
they've been taught. Mm-hmm.
yes, yeah. I find that of interest to me because I used to be a runner. I say used to be only because this past year I've been nursing an injury and I plan on getting back to running. But I always found
Mm-hmm.
it fascinating that I'd be running along at a decent pace. I've never been a fast runner, and suddenly I sensed this desire to, oh, you can slow down now. You're going fast enough. And I've been a runner for over 30 years, so I understood after a while. It took me a while to figure it out that when that was happening instinctively, I'd look down and I'd be on an upgrade. I'd be on a little incline, and a part of my conscious brain is saying, okay,
Mm-hmm.
you've done enough. And you have to get out of your comfort zone and break through those barriers in order
Mm-hmm.
to, you know what I'm getting at. And I think our brains are designed, our primitive brain are designed to seek comfort because 150 years ago, you had to strive to survive. And now
Let's
the reverse
separate
is
that.
true. Yes, good.
Let's separate that. Our brains are designed to adapt.
Okay.
So that's our basic function. And the importance that we attribute to that cognitively is separate from our ability to adapt. The function of the brain, as I see it, is to be aware of the environment, situational awareness, and respond accordingly. Now we can label that response. You're running, you could have labeled it, oh my goodness, yay, a challenge. Or
Yeah.
your brain labeled it, oh, this sucks, like me at my
Right.
5K last Thursday. The whole thing, by the way. So
Right.
what the emotions that you attribute to that are coming from your conscious brain rather than your actual the adaptive brain. Make
Right.
sense?
Yes, it
And
does. And I think the point that I'm trying to make is that we're no longer in a struggle for survival. You walk to or drive to that, for that matter, to the grocery store, and there's all the food that you need for a reasonable price. Back when we were
mm-hmm,
in an environment where we had to put a lot of effort in, our brain would look for the
mm-hmm,
reward at the end, the comfort, sit down, relax. Now
mm-hmm,
that seems to be the groove that most people live in. They're not recognizing that the struggle has its own reward. We almost have to artificially struggle now and
mm-hmm,
deliberately exercise in order to get to a place of
mm-hmm.
saying, okay, now I can take comfort in comfort. I don't have to. I don't have to be lazy. I don't know if that's making any sense. It's just my own musing. But
Mm-hmm.
so the brain, we're talking about neurology, and I want to make just a little switch gears just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Chiropractic neurology, what has been deemed subluxation neurology by mentors like Dr. Dan Murphy and James
Mm-hmm.
Chestnut and others.
Mm-hmm.
Subluxation neurology is somewhat complex. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I know you don't like to be the folks to be on you, but I'm going to say you understand it a lot better than I do, or maybe than the average chiropractor. But it's
You know,
out. Yeah.
one really totally neat thing to think about is one thing that I love from Dan Murphy and Pat Gentempo and James Chester is when you really, really deeply understand a subject and you can talk about it in simple terms that people can grasp a hold of
Right.
and plant that for people to learn their own. So That's kind of rather than spew all of the
Right.
knowledge, all of the pathways.
Right.
That's where I kind of would love to focus on subluxation
Right.
biology.
So let's focus on that then. So
Yeah,
the simple, to crystallize subluxation neurology, there's now good documentation that the vertebral subluxation has a profound impact on the central nervous system.
a start. We are nowhere near where we can be and where we will.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
we have a good preliminary.
Right.
We have the clinical evidence and the experiential evidence is 3 orders of magnitude over anything that has been published. The tricky part is taking all that experiential knowledge and that clinical knowledge that we collectively see every day in our practices and distilling that to what is the social proof, the socially accepted, the cultural authority of published research.
Right.
Just because it isn't published doesn't mean it isn't true.
Right. So tell me if I'm understanding this correctly. On one end, we have Dr. Matthew McCoy, who's doing publishing case studies, that sort of research. On the other end, on the university level, we've got Dr. Heidi Havoc publishing the impact of a subluxation on the prefrontal cortex and so forth. And how would you make those two, or how do you see those two coming together, or what would you say we need to backfill the void with? What still needs to be done? I know you're saying we're just getting started. So what are some of the missing pieces to the puzzle?
You know what I would love for us to do is to focus on exactly what both of them are looking at, outcomes. Right. First, we clearly established that there is a clear clinical outcome to correction of vertebral subluxation. Not just one, but many clinical outcomes to correction and of vertebral subluxation with a specific chiropractic adjustment. So that's going to show a correlation, not a causation.
Right.
So once we have that social proof, once we have that just buckets of evidence, and McCoy is well on the way to getting that with all of his case studies.
Right.
Once we have all those buckets of evidence, we can say, okay, what is the common denominator? And that's where Heidi Havoc's research comes in, is providing us with some of that basic science. It provides a plausible hypothesis that can explain all of the outcomes that we're looking at. But here's the trick. The outcomes we're looking at are so different that you can't think in terms of linear biology, A plus B equals C, and reproducibility in order to say, okay, if I adjust C2, I'm going to correct sinus infection, because the human body is it's a chaos system. It's a dynamical system, and it has multiple inputs which determine multiple outputs at any given time. It's not like a simple circuit breaker. It's much more complex than that. So what we need to be able to do is to say, we've got a whole bunch of outcomes that happen after we correct the subluxation. So then other folks have been defining what are the findings of the subluxation. And that's where the Australian Spinal Research Foundation and the IFCO's definition of subluxation has been coming forth and saying it is a motion abnormality or a malposition of the spinal segments that results in a neurological nervous system abnormality. It's a connection between those two. So when we can take all of those 3 puzzle pieces and fit them together in an umbrella that is consistent with the biology of the human body, we've got all the puzzle pieces. They're not coalescing just yet. And I'm going to throw something back out there that everybody's going to hate me for. Principle 6.
Principle of time, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Everything takes time. Things are, the supportive evidence, both clinical, experiential, research evidence, showing the value of the delivery of the chiropractic adjustment to reduce or eliminate subluxation, vertebral subluxation complex, and the outcomes we see. We have known that since the influenza epidemic of 1918.
Right.
Agreed?
Yes,
Right.
and I'm aware of that, but for those that are not, can you just summarize what that involves?
Oh, yeah. So that's a fun one. So for anybody who's watching this, I'm going to encourage you to Google Dan Murphy's explanation of the chiropractic profession's contribution to fighting the epidemic of Spanish flu, I believe, in 1918. The punchline is that basically, in terms of public health, the U.S. government called an all hands on deck, meaning we're in deep doo-doo here. I'm trying not to swear, so I won't. We're in deep doo-doo. We're in deep doo here, and anybody who can help, would you please report for duty? So hospitals, chiropractic hospitals, were actually caring for patients who were suffering from influenza. And these chiropractic hospitals, to my understanding, please, anybody correct me if I've got any of the facts wrong here, but these chiropractic hospitals had a statistically better outcome than traditional hospitals.
Much higher survival rates. Much higher survival rates. Right.
Fascinating. And that was in my in one version of the story, that was one of the foundational pieces that established chiropractic as a healing profession, not limited to back pain, not related to magnetic therapy. It was based on outcomes.
So let me go full
outcomes.
Yes, and let me therefore take that and go full circle back to where we began. So some lay people are going to see this and they're going to think, well, that's crazy talk. What would chiropractic have to do with the flu? And we're not going to answer that question today. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But what I want to bring this back to is human potential. So we have a potential for health and for healing that really has been
underappreciated.
It's practically been beaten out of the average person. They're taught to fear their body, fear disease, fear their environment, fear the sun, fear the air, fear the water. And I think the only thing we really have to fear is the way mankind has tinkered with all those things, in our environment and so forth. But in terms of our inner potential, and again back to the way it should integrate with our environment, we were made to, and I know you agree, we were made to thrive. We were made to not only be healthy and not only prevent disease, which I still see as in the category of pathology. Take it out of the treatment of disease and look at the body as like your patients, your elderly patients, some of whom are in their 80s. I know some of my patients that are in their 70s, 80s, 90s, and not taking any medication and still being able to freely ambulate. What's that?
Yeah. What's different about them?
Yeah.
That's one of the questions we need to look at. What is essentially different about a human being who is a septuagenarian, octogenarian, notogenarian, who does not need to chemically control themselves from the outside in and can thrive? What's essentially different about an 80-year-old man who can climb at Mount Washington versus an 80-year-old man who is constrained to a wheelchair or in an assisted living facility?
So most people have resigned themselves. Most people have resigned themselves to a life of disability and disease, and they'll, you can tell the indoctrination because they come into our offices and they're suffering, and they'll say, "Oh, it quote sucks to get old," and I have to bite my lip because I want to say you didn't have to accept this outcome. Part of it bears we bear part of the responsibility for the body we end up with.
Give the body what it needs, take away what it doesn't, and give the body time to adapt to its environment. That is a basic recipe for health. Right. You can categorize nutrition, exercise, hydration, sleep, and positive thinking as to give the body what it needs. Take away what the body doesn't need, what is interfering with the body. Vertebral subluxation complex happens to be in that category of take away what the body does not need. So optimize the bodies, skew the picture in favor of the body adapting to its environment.
Absolutely.
eliminate anything that is obstructing that natural process and allow the body to reequilibrate. The crap about, you know, 40, I'm over the hill and everything's going to break. I'm probably stronger at 45 than I was at 35.
Absolutely.
Because I only discovered chiropractic at age 30, and I've been under care for 15 years now. My body is much stronger than it used to be. And that has to do with the chiropractic lifestyle of thinking about my body as an adaptive machine, give it what it needs, take away what it doesn't, trust it, and give it time. Now, the world is not perfect. It's not always going to be that there's going to be obstacles to overcome. But in general, if we were to think about that, or for our patients, think about that as our basic recipe for health, then that could change paradigm.
So not everybody has the same exact body and the same individual challenges or stresses and things to overcome. But people have, I'm paraphrasing, so you correct me if I'm wrong, people have a much higher potential than they've been led to believe. And if they're doing some of those basic things, they can not only, they might, they may or may not live longer, but they're going to live with a higher quality of life, a higher quality of living.
They
What's
will
that?
live. I'm going to toss a story at you that's a very interesting chiropractic story, and you're actually going to be the first person to really get the spectrum of this story. And it has to do with the body's innate capacity to heal and making sure that you have all of the right resources to enable your body to do just that.
Okay. I love
Nick,
stories.
You know, about a year ago, I fell and I had a head injury.
Yes,
You know
I heard about that. I had seen your posts and I didn't know the details, but yes, I knew that.
It was much worse than I let on.
Okay.
It was, well, you're not going to post that on social media.
Right.
I have
some people would.
No, that's not graceful.
Right. No, I agree.
So I have some photos that I have shared with a few people of what happened to me. And I have some pretty visible cranial facial asymmetry. I have I have a little bit of nerve damage, had a little bit of nerve damage. And right now you're looking at my face and you're seeing symmetry and you're seeing motion. You may see some very subtle deficits, but you're going to have to look pretty carefully to find those. So take two different trajectories. One, I have never been adjusted. I do not know anything about chiropractic care. And I fell and hit my head. I have an average standard American diet. I don't exercise. I'm in a desk job. And I hit my head and I go into the ER, I get a CAT scan, get an MRI, and I'm taught to be terrified that I'm about to have a subdural hematoma and I'm going to, versus second trajectory. I hit my head. I say, okay, that is a problem. What are my resources? And one of my most powerful resources was chiropractic, without question. I remember a day that I walked into the Mass Alliance for Chiropractic Philosophy, and two of my friends, Linda and John Mark Slack, had not seen me since the accident. They looked at me, and John Mark was like, "We're getting you on the table now." And I had no idea it was possible, truly possible, to reshape cranial bones. I learned. Wow. And that started, imagine if that had not happened. Right. And my face was, the seat from my brain had been permanently altered. It still is. So that started a cascade of healing that would not have happened had I not had those resources. Similarly, I've had several different types of care, most recently Blair upper cervical care. Which I love Blair.
Blair is great stuff.
I am kind of blown away by that. Kind of blown away by what has happened. And over the course of the past year, because of nutritional supplementation, chiropractic care, knowing how to try to reduce stress, wherever possible. That's a different story.
Inside joke.
I jest, but it hasn't been pretty. So 2 weeks after my accident happened, I was cognitively compromised. I couldn't complete some sentences. I couldn't find words. I was having a lot of difficulties. I had mild traumatic brain injury and I had post-concussive syndrome. Had it not been, every single adjustment that I had helped to clear my head, and I could see myself slowly starting to track back on a healing trajectory. I actually, because I'm a quantitative nerd, I did a IQ test July of last year, and because of the head injury, I literally dropped 20 points on my IQ.
Wow.
And I was unable to finish a grant for the ASRF because I couldn't type. My hand wasn't working. I had like dyslexia in my fingers. It was really very interesting.
Wow.
So there were some pretty notable manifestations, and I could have either decided I was broken and been terrified of my body and taken Neurontin, gabapentin, and whatever the crap might have been thrown at me, or I could take a second choice, which was, how do I empower my body to heal? I really, truly wonder what would have happened had I not come across chiropractic, and had I not been up there for as long as I had I not had the resources that I did have at my disposal, or the knowledge at my disposal.
And had you not sensed that there was hope? And really, because I know our time is running out here, we're both going to have to get to our office, the respective office. Well, you're in your office.
Yep. Yeah, I'm in my
office. So I have patients starting in 10 minutes. So I'm gonna ask you to take what you just said and maybe summarize the idea.
I can give you a quick punchline on that one.
Okay, well I'm gonna give you a leading question, and you can integrate it in your answer. I've always saw chiropractic as a profession of hope. That what we're offering people is hope, not false hope, not placebo hope.
No, hope based in biology.
But hope based in biology, and a philosophy of hope. A philosophy that even some chiropractic institutions are setting aside, thinking that they're becoming, quote, evidence-based by focusing merely on treating aches and pains and,
by limiting themselves, right.
Yes, and I believe, I believe in, I limit my practice to just the spine, to only the subluxation, only correcting subluxations, because I believe that, in a sense, we're working with the unlimited when we're working with central nervous system and with the innate intelligence. So we're offering people a way to rethink about their health, about their being, about, again, their entire environment that is hopeful, not fear-based, and meanwhile is not selling them a bill of goods. We're not saying, hey, go to a chiropractor and you're never going to suffer again, but we're saying you've got much more potential for health and healing than you've ever realized and ever actualized. So take take your experience, your story, and maybe put a punctuation mark on that.
Okay, so you and I know, as people who are familiar with biology and who follow the chiropractic research, that correction of the craniocervical junction can result in improved venous drainage from the brain and arterial supply to the brain. So let's step aside from that and say subluxation at the craniocervical junction could cause impedance of blood flow to the brain or venous drainage from the brain, which logically is bad when the brain is inflamed.
Absolutely.
So what makes logical sense then is to correct that situation and restore the appropriate fluid transfer in and out of the cranium to enable the brain to actually get the appropriate nutrients and release the waste products and do what it does best, is heal and regulate the body. So let's take that situation. I endured a traumatic subluxation. What happened if I didn't know to get adjusted?
Right.
I knew.
Right.
How many people out there have no idea that after they've sustained, people should be under care for all of their lives. That's a given for optimal potential. Right. But just as a very concrete measurement, How many people have no idea that after you've had a neck injury of any kind, you should absolutely be checked by a chiropractor? And if you don't, you could create an obstruction to your optimal health, whether it's by your nervous system, whether it's by your blood flow in and out of your cranium. That's just basic biology. That's not even philosophy. That's biology.
Right. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a traumatic injury. I mean, I'm sure you as well as in my office, we focus on babies that have had no trauma. What's that? Yes. It can be something as simple as posture, position, any number of things that contribute to subluxation, to misalignment at the upper cervical junction with the skull. And we've not even...
today on the use of mobile phones. There's recent research showing that is creating an abnormal spinal structure, which is one of the factors which will impede fluid transfer, much less irritate the nervous system.
And we haven't even mentioned yet, and we don't have time to now, but the rich abundance of mechanoreceptors that are disturbed, at C1.
You and I can go off into left field on that one. I will simply say this: in the genre of Dan Murphy and James Chestnut and Patrick Gentempo, and a lot of the basic science research, the biology of the cranial cervical junction and the input of the mechanoreceptors to the brainstem, the multifactorial input, which integrated dictates multifactorial output. Basically, take all those words, the biology is there.
Absolutely.
Bottom line, the biology supports the necessity of correction of vertebral subluxation complex with the specific chiropractic adjustment.
Absolutely.
That's where we go as a profession, is just really respecting the biology of the system and integrating with it. Absolutely.
So we're saying, to wrap things up, that if someone's getting proper sleep, which is unusual in this day and age, they're getting regular movement and or exercise, they've got a good mental outlook, that's good social interaction, trying to eat more whole foods, hydrating well, all those things that contribute, and reducing and or removing vertebral subluxations in their spine, in their spine, particularly the upper cervical spine. Everyone has the potential to be a free-range human, a fully integrated whole person at a much higher, they can expect a much higher quality of living than they've resigned themselves to.
Everything you choose determines your health trajectory. So your choices, do they dictate a trajectory towards pathogenesis and disease pathology, or do your choices dictate a path towards salutogenesis, healthy, maintaining and optimizing your system so that you're best adapting to your environment and enjoying your experiences? That's a choice we make every day.
So for those that are not familiar with that word that you just said, salutogenesis, just to break it down, it means the generation of health in our body. Salute, meaning health or wholeness.
Yeah.
Genesis. We're used to thinking of, again, in fear about disease and fearing what's around the corner, what's coming with old age, and genetics is, again, this axe hanging over everybody's head. That's the way it's been discussed, but that's not true.
Collins, by the way, the current director of the NIH, Francis Collins, one of the leaders of Human Genome Project, very appropriate, biologically appropriate quote for us to consider. His quote is, "Genetics loads the gun, environment pulls the trigger."
Absolutely.
We should not be scared of our genetics. We should be aware of our environment.
So turning on or turning off our genes, our DNA, our chromosomes is really a matter of choice, a matter of lifestyle.
Yep.
And you can have a very hopeful outlook about your future and about your children's future if you understand that. If you embrace that, yeah.
But as the general thumb rule of health, yes, that's where we should be thinking, yes.
All right. Well, this has been awesome. I know we're both under the gun in terms of our schedules, but I really appreciate this. And, I know we're going to talk again, and I love your work. And even though you don't want to brag about it, you're contributing a lot on the research side of things, and maybe that's a discussion for another time. But if not, this has been fantastic.
I'm just a human, just like the rest of us chiropractors. I enjoy watching my patients get better when I adjust them to correct their subluxations, and anything I can do to help strengthen as a profession. My brain is as at the profession's disposal.
That's awesome.
Simple as that. Thank you for
You're
having me.
awesome.
I've enjoyed
No,
the
thank you
conversation.
so
I love
much.
like-minded people.
Exactly. All right. God bless. Have a great day. And we're almost at the weekend here. So have a wonderful weekend outside. I see your puppy's right behind you. What's his or her name?
Oh, this is Roxy Rudel. This is Roxy, and Sagan is out in the other room, and we are very likely to be out on a boat this weekend.
Oh my gosh.
On a lake in central New Hampshire.
That is so exciting.
Uh-huh.
That is so
Let's
exciting.
go swimming.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Haas. Have a great
Thank
week.
you for the conversation, and have a lovely afternoon.
I plan on it. All right. God bless.
You too.